Hello and welcome to Zero Camp's Warmachine Mark IV Army Spotlight and Overview series. Today, we will be looking at the Khymaera Shadowflame Shard. Shadowflame Shard are what you get when you cross meat and machine to create angry mecha dragons. Shadowflame Shard is a beautiful crystalline glass cannon of death. They offer a combined arms approach with a strong melee slant. They want to set up and take the biggest alpha strike they can and escape with as much as they can before their glass armor cracks. Let's start this off by looking at 3 starting casters for Shadowflame Shard, starting with Nixian, the Stygian Coil.
Stygian, the best.
Nixian is a very adaptive caster that can make good use of the whole spell rack, and since he gets to pick 3, will get lots of chances to do so. Prey may seem out of place on a warlock without a melee or ranged weapon, but when mixed with Long Shadows and Power Swell for added fury, Nixian becomes a deadly magic assassination caster. Also, his feat allows for all nearby warrior models to also benefit from Prey. When used properly, this can be an incredibly effective alpha or late game swing to take out droves of your opponent's models. Add all of that to 3 different sources of extra movement to ensure that the things you want to die will die. Next, let's turn to Rasic, Spawn of Shadows. Rasic is a great balance caster that wants to use his battle plans to make his warrior model friends harder to kill while also punishing your opponent for even daring to attack you. Rasic has Flashing Blade and Warpath on his spell list, which presents great threat range extensions and the ability to mow through units at a time. Combine that with Sidestep, and he can extend himself even further across the board to reach wherever he wants to go. Rasic is a great caster to punish your opponent for their positioning, and if your opponent dares to come at you, his feat will ensure to punish them for doing so. Lastly, we'll look at Shrus, the Flawless Dark. Shrus has an amazing movement without buffs and can casually threaten 23 inches across the board. And don't let that POW 10 gun fool you, as he can roll 4 dice damage fairly easily. Shrus also has a strong ability to apply debuffs to opponents and an amazingly safe feat turn by giving himself and all friendlies concealment and possibly stealth when stacked with Prowl. Shrus is a great, well-rounded caster that will fit well into any type of list you want to build. Now let's turn to one of the highlights of Mark IV Warmachine that sets it apart from previous versions, the included spell rack for each of the armies. Each of the casters gets to take 2 or 3 additional spells off of the list, so it's worth a second to look at what this does for us. The common theme for the Shadowflame Shard spell rack is Toolbox. Since you get to pick these spells after you know what your opponent is playing, you can use this rack to answer questions that they may not otherwise be able to. Carnivore is a nice buff to make sure your models hit when they need to, with the added bonus of healing your warlock. Curse of Shadows allows you to reduce armor, but also lets you move through your opponent's models. Dash is a great threat extension for a lot of models at once. Dragon's Blood is a nice armor buff that can also kill small wound models. Execration of Blackest Night is a nice way to give your army a defense buff that your opponents can't avoid. Host of Shadows gives Ghostly to your battle group, which allows for great threat extensions by going through models and obstructions. Occultation casually hands stealth out to models. Silence of Death is a great attack and damage buff for a melee unit that stops things like Tough. Veil of Mists is a cloud effect that blocks line of sight only for your opponent, but also gives your models Pathfinder when they touch it. And Watcher is a way to keep your casters safe by allowing one of your beasts to move and attack should anyone get too close. We've seen a few casters and the spell rack. Now let's dive into what a starting 30-point list might look like using just the models from the starter box. Our scout caster in the starter box is Shrus, the Flawless Dark. For this list, we're starting with Shrus and will tentatively rack Carnivore, Curse of Shadows, and Dash, but remember to swap those out as needed at the start of the game. To make up our battle group, we'll take the Hydrix with the Diviner on the central head and Flame Sprayer on both of the smaller heads. To finish him out, we'll slot the Spine back on the dorsal. Our light beast is the Vipex with the Asp head, Hunter's Mark tail, and Cleaver arms. To round out the list, we'll take a unit of Talon Death Dealers. To finish us off, we'll take Blessing of the Gods for magic and blessed weapons, Breakthrough to disengage when needed, Hit and Run to get added movement and positioning, Infiltration to grant stealth for the death dealers to make the most use of our feat, and Power Swell for the added fury. After learning the ropes, we can move on to a 50-point army that might look like this, still only using the starter box models. We've got Shrus the Flawless Dark still, and racking Carnivore, Curse of Shadows, and Dash again, but swap out as needed. The Hydrix doesn't change with the Diviner, Flame Sprayers, and Spineback. Our Vipex gets a small change with the Ophidian head and keeps the Hunter's Mark tail and Cleaver arms. We'll grab the Shadowmancer Scion solo, and a unit of Quick Fang Stalkers with the attachment the Quick Fang Master. Keep the Talon Death Dealers, and add a unit of Wormspine Shadowmancers. Our command cards are the same for the same reasons: Blessing of the Gods, Breakthrough, Hit and Run, Infiltration, and Power Swell. Now that we looked at where we're started, let's look at where we're going. When you're ready to start expanding, you've got options depending on where you want to go. If you want to dabble a bit more before committing, pick up Rasic in order to have another caster to try. Belagul, Master of Pain, is a mercenary, but he is an absolute utility for your beasts and helps you get your damage to healthy numbers. The Wyvern is the only faction super heavy beast and works very well with the base 2 casters you get in Shrus and Rasic. If you want more options, Carver and Zacchaeus can round out very commonly taken merc options. Should all of those appeal to you, the expansion and Cadre are very worthwhile purchases, as the expansion gets you Nixian, the Stygian Coil, Talon Lashers, Wormspine Cinderbacks, Wraithwing Paragons, a Spinner, and Riven, the Onyx Rampant. The Shard Incarnate's Cadre will get you a 4th caster in Kyrax, a new heavy beast in the Drakion, a unit of Incarnate Knights, and the Incarnate Conjurer. Well, that's it for our intro to the Warmachine Mark IV Army Khymaera Shadowflame Shard. Let us know what you want to see next, or your hot takes by leaving us those comments below and hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Until next time.